The cantina on Kepler 442 station smelled like burnt metal and alien sweat, but Jinwoo Park had been in worse places during his years as a human diplomat. He sat at a corner table with Minji Kim, waiting for their mysterious contact to arrive. The message had been simple but urgent. A member of the Galactic Mapping Consortium wanted to meet them about something concerning human space. Minji adjusted her translator device and looked around the dimly lit room filled with various alien species drinking colorful liquids from strange containers. As a xenobiologist, she found the diversity fascinating, but tonight her mind was focused on the meeting ahead. The Altarian appeared exactly on time, his tall blue form moving carefully through the crowded space. Veltar had 6 eyes arranged in pairs along his elongated skull, and right now all of them showed signs of stress. His usually pristine mapping equipment hung loosely from his belt, and his hands shook slightly as he approached their table. "Thank you for coming," Veltar said in his musical voice, the translator converting his words into perfect Korean for their benefit. "What I must tell you tonight will sound impossible, but I swear by the 7 moons of Altair that every word is true." Jinwoo leaned forward, his military training making him alert to the genuine fear in the alien's voice. "You said this was about mapping human space, but you gave us no details. What exactly is the problem?" Veltar's eyes darted around the cantina before he pulled out a small device and activated it. A soft humming filled the air around their table. "Privacy field," he explained. "No one can hear us now, and no recording. Devices will function. What I'm about to tell you is known only to the highest levels of the Galactic Mapping Consortium, and sharing it could cost me my career or worse." Minji exchanged a glance with Jinwoo. In all their years of diplomatic work, they had rarely encountered such obvious terror from an alien species. The Altarians were known throughout the galaxy for their calm, methodical approach to everything, especially their cartographic work. "For the past 50 years, Veltar continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "the Galactic Mapping Consortium has maintained detailed star charts of every known region of space, every region except one. We have deliberately refused to create complete maps of human-controlled territory." "That seems like simple prejudice," Jinwoo said, though something in Veltar's manner suggested the truth was far more complex. "Many species have shown reluctance to deal with humans since we joined the galactic community." "No, you do not understand." Veltar's 6 eyes focused on Jinwoo with an intensity that made the human diplomat uncomfortable. "This is not about politics or xenophobia. This is about survival. Every mapping expedition we have sent into human space has either vanished completely or returned with crews so traumatized they refused to speak about what they experienced." The alien reached into his equipment belt and produced a small data crystal. "I have brought evidence, though showing it to you violates every protocol of my organization. The few expeditions that did return brought back data that defies explanation. Their instruments recorded readings that should not be possible according to known physics." Minji took the crystal and inserted it into her portable analyzer. The device immediately began displaying star charts and sensor readings that made her eyes widen with confusion. "These gravity readings make no sense. It looks like your instruments detected massive objects in empty space, but there is nothing there on visual scans." "Exactly," Veltar said, his voice carrying a note of desperation. "But that is not the worst part. Look at the timestamp on those readings. They were taken in the Proxima Nexus region, supposedly empty space between human colonies. But watch what happens when we overlay the readings with known human settlement patterns." The display changed and both humans stared in shock. The massive gravity signatures perfectly outlined the locations of human colonies, but extended far beyond them in patterns that suggested some kind of vast network connecting every human settlement across dozens of star systems. "Your colonies are not separate," Veltar continued. "According to our instruments, they are all connected by something that exists in space but cannot be seen or detected by normal means. The connecting structures, if they are structures, extend across light years of apparently empty void." Jinwoo felt a chill run down his spine. As a former military strategist, he understood the implications of what Veltar was suggesting. Are you telling us that human space is not what it appears to be? I am telling you that human space may not be space at all, at least not in any way the rest of the galaxy understands the concept. Veltar's hands were shaking more visibly now. But there is more. The few cartographers who survived their encounters in human territory all reported the same phenomenon. They said the space around human settlements was aware of their presence, as if it was watching them. Minji looked up. From the analyzer, her face pale. Watching them how? The survivors described feeling observed from the moment they entered human-controlled regions. Their instruments began receiving signals in languages that do not exist, mathematical formulas that violate basic principles of reality. Several reported that their navigation systems began showing routes to destinations they had never programmed, as if something was trying to guide them to specific locations. Veltar activated another device, and a holographic image appeared above the table. It showed a recording from what appeared to be the bridge of a mapping vessel. The crew members were clearly agitated, pointing at their instruments and speaking rapidly in a language the translator could not identify. This is from the last transmission of the exploration vessel Farseeker, before it vanished 3 years ago, Veltar explained. Watch the navigation display carefully. On the recording, the navigation system began showing a route that led directly toward a region of space that appeared completely empty. But as they watched, something began to appear on the long-range sensors. It looked like a human colony ship, but it was moving through space without any visible propulsion system, somehow traveling faster than light without engaging any FTL drive. The image quality deteriorated rapidly, filled with static and strange interference patterns. But just before the transmission cut out completely, the ship on the scanner seemed to change shape, stretching and flowing like liquid, while maintaining its basic structure. That ship was moving in ways that should not be possible, Veltar said, quietly. It was not flying through space so much as swimming through it, as if space itself had become fluid around it. The Farseeker's final sensor reading detected massive structural changes in the fabric of space-time itself. The recording ended abruptly, leaving the three beings sitting in stunned silence. Finally, Minji found her voice. What happened to the Farseeker? No trace was ever found. But 6 months later, a human trade vessel reported finding pieces of Altarian mapping equipment floating in an asteroid field on the outer edge of human space. The equipment had been somehow fused with materials that do not exist in any known periodic table. Jinwoo was struggling to process the implications of what they were hearing. Are you suggesting that humans have developed technology so advanced that it appears supernatural to other species? I am suggesting, Veltar said, all 6 eyes now focused on both humans with an expression of profound unease, that humans may have developed beyond technology entirely. The reports from surviving cartographers all contain similar descriptions of human settlements that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, of human colonists who appear to move between star systems without ships, of human space that responds to the thoughts and intentions of those who enter it. The privacy field around their table flickered, and Veltar quickly shut down his equipment. I must go now. Staying here too long will attract attention I cannot afford. But remember this. The galaxy refuses to map human space not because we fear humans themselves, but because we fear what we might discover about the nature of reality if we look too closely at what humans have become. As the Altarian prepared to leave, Minji called out to him. Why are you telling us this? What do you want us to do with this information? Veltar paused at the edge of their table, his 6 eyes reflecting the dim lights of the cantina. Because humans deserve to know the truth about what the rest of the galaxy thinks they have become. And because if my people are right about what is happening in human space, then the choice of what to do about it should be yours, not ours. With that, he disappeared into the crowded cantina, leaving Jinwoo and Minji alone with the data crystal, and a growing sense that their understanding of human civilization was about to change forever. The Galactic Archive was a massive structure that floated in the neutral space between 3 star systems, housing the collected knowledge of hundreds of civilizations. Hyunwoo Lee stood before its impressive entrance, feeling small next to the towering crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with stored information. Beside him, Sun-Hee Choi checked her datapad one more time, reviewing the access codes that Jinwoo had somehow managed to obtain. "Are you certain about this?" Sun-Hee asked quietly as they approached the main entrance. "If we are caught accessing restricted files, it could cause a diplomatic incident. After what Veltar showed us, we need answers," Hyunwoo replied, though he felt the same nervousness. As an archaeologist who specialized in data recovery, he had accessed many ancient databases, but never one with this level of galactic security. The entrance scanner read their credentials and allowed them inside, where they were met by Mordak, an elderly Centaurian librarian whose forearms moved constantly as he organized floating data crystals around himself. His horse-like body moved with surprising grace despite his obvious age, and his large eyes showed the kind of wisdom that came from centuries of managing galactic knowledge. "So, you are the humans who wish to see the restricted files about your own people," Mordak said, his voice carrying a note of concern. "I must warn you that what you will discover may not be what you expect. The files I'm about to show you have been classified not to hide them from humans, but to protect other species from knowledge that might prove dangerous to their psychological well-being." He led them through corridors lined with massive data storage units, each one containing the equivalent of entire planetary libraries. The deeper they went into the archive, the more restricted the access became, until finally they reached a section that required Mordak's personal authorization to enter. These files contain reports from exploration missions, first contact scenarios, and scientific observations gathered over 2 centuries, Mordak explained as he activated a holographic interface. They all concern human space and human activities, and they all share one common characteristic. They describe phenomena that challenge our basic understanding of reality. The first file that appeared showed a report from a draconian survey mission from nearly 200 years earlier. Hyunwoo read through the technical details, but it was the conclusion that made his blood run cold. The survey team had discovered a human colony that existed in what they described as folded space, occupying the same coordinates as empty void, but somehow existing in a different dimensional layer. "Look at the sensor readings," Sun-Hee said, pointing to the attached data. According to this, the colony was drawing energy directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations. That should be impossible with any known technology. Mordak nodded grimly. That report was filed as a curiosity at first, but similar findings began appearing with increasing frequency. Each new expedition returned with more disturbing discoveries about human capabilities. He opened another file, this one from a more recent exploration mission. The report described human mining operations in an asteroid belt, but the mining was unlike anything the observers had ever seen. Instead of extracting materials from the asteroids, the humans appeared to be extracting matter from parallel versions of the asteroids that existed in alternate dimensions. The observers watched human miners reach into empty space and pull out refined metals and rare elements. Mordak continued. When they tried to scan the area with their instruments, they detected an infinite number of overlapping asteroid belts, each one slightly different from the others. The humans seemed to be accessing all of them simultaneously. Hyunwoo felt his understanding of physics beginning to crack. "Are you telling us that humans have found a way to mine resources from alternate realities?" "According to these reports, that appears to be exactly what they have done," Mordak replied. "But the implications go far beyond simple resource extraction. If humans can access parallel dimensions at will, it suggests a level of technological development that borders on the supernatural." The next file contained observations that made both humans step backward in shock. The report described a human settlement where the colonists were living in open space without any form of environmental protection. They were not wearing spacesuits or living in enclosed habitats, but simply existing in the vacuum as if it were breathable atmosphere. The observers watched human children playing games in the hard vacuum between 2 planets. Sun-Hee read aloud, her voice shaking. The children were somehow breathing space itself, and their movement suggested they were swimming through vacuum as if it were water. That report caused significant debate among galactic scientists, Mordak said. Some believed it was a hoax, or a misinterpretation of sensor data. Others suggested that humans had developed biological modifications so advanced that they could survive in any environment. But there was a third theory that proved even more disturbing. He activated another display, showing a file marked with warning symbols from a dozen different species. This report came from Zephyros, an ethereal researcher who observed human activities in the Vega sector. Ethereals exist as pure energy, so they can perceive forms of existence that material beings cannot detect. The report from Zephyros was unlike anything in the previous files. Instead of describing technology or biological adaptation, it described humans who had somehow learned to exist as both matter and energy simultaneously. According to the ethereal observer, these humans could shift between physical and energetic states at will, allowing them to travel between star systems by becoming part of the electromagnetic spectrum itself. Zephyros reported watching a human family dissolve into light and reconstitute themselves on a planet 12 light-years away, completing the journey in a matter of hours. Mordak continued. But even more disturbing was his observation that these humans retained their individual consciousness and memories throughout the transformation. Sunhee was studying the technical data attached to the report, her face growing paler with each passing moment. According to this, the energy signatures of the transformed humans were identical to naturally occurring cosmic phenomena. They were not using technology to become energy. They were actually converting their matter into forms that are indistinguishable from stellar radiation and cosmic rays. The implications of that observation led to the establishment of our current policy regarding human space, Mordak said quietly. If humans have learned to exist as pure energy while maintaining consciousness, they have essentially become a new form of life that transcends the boundary between living beings and natural forces. Hyunwoo was reviewing earlier files, looking for patterns in the reports. What he found made him realize the true scope of what they were discovering. Look at the dates on these reports, he said to Sunhee. The earliest ones describe relatively normal human activities, but each subsequent report shows more advanced capabilities. It is as if humans are evolving at an accelerated rate. That is exactly what the analysis suggests, Mordak confirmed. The pattern shows a clear progression from conventional space colonization to increasingly impossible feats of existence. But the most disturbing aspect is that this evolution appears to be intentional and coordinated across all human populations. The final file in the restricted section contained a message that had been received by the archive just 5 years earlier. It came from the Ethereal Collective, a group consciousness composed of beings who had transcended physical existence millions of years ago. The message was brief, but chilling in its implications. We who believed ourselves to be the highest form of conscious evolution have encountered our superiors, the message read. Humanity has achieved something we thought impossible. They have become one with the fundamental forces of reality, while maintaining individual identity and purpose. They have not conquered space, they have become space itself, and space has become aware through them. Sunhee sat down heavily in one of the archive chairs, overwhelmed by the implications of what they had discovered. If this is true, then humans are not just exploring the galaxy, they are transforming it into something alive and conscious. The evidence suggests exactly that, Mordak replied. Every region of space that humans have settled shows signs of fundamental changes in the structure of reality itself. Gravity behaves differently, energy flows in impossible patterns, and the boundary between matter and consciousness becomes blurred. Hyunwoo was studying star charts that showed the progression of human expansion across the galaxy. What he saw made him understand why other species were terrified. Look at this pattern, he said, pointing to the charts. Human settlements are not random. They are positioned in a way that creates a vast network across space, as if they are building something on a galactic scale. That observation led to our final policy decision, Mordak said. We realized that mapping human space in detail would reveal the true nature of what humans are becoming, and that knowledge might force other species to confront the possibility of their own evolution beyond physical existence. The old Centaurian looked at both humans with a mixture of respect and fear. Your species has achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. You have found a way to transcend the limitations of matter and energy while remaining essentially human. The medical facility on Titan 7 was a place where beings went to recover from experiences that had shattered their understanding of reality. Yunanam walked through its sterile corridors beside Do-Hyun Kang, both of them preparing for what might be their most difficult interview yet. According to the facility records, Sylvanus had been a patient here for 3 years, ever since returning from an expedition into human space that had left him the only survivor of his crew. The medical staff warned us that he may not be coherent, Yuna said softly as they approached the private room where Sylvanus was being treated. Apparently he has good days and bad days, and on the bad days he becomes convinced that space itself is watching him. Do-Hyun checked his recording equipment one more time, though he wondered if they would learn anything useful from a traumatized alien who might be suffering from delusions. The facility director said that Sylvanus was once considered one of the finest explorers in Korvaxian history. He had mapped more unknown regions than any other member of his species. They entered the room to find Sylvanus sitting by the large viewport that looked out at the stars beyond Titan 7. The Korvaxian was much smaller than either human had expected, his insectoid body barely reaching their shoulders, but his large compound eyes held an intelligence that seemed surprisingly sharp, despite his supposed mental condition. "You are the humans who want to hear about the Proxima Nexus expedition," Sylvanus said without turning away from the viewport. His translator rendered his chittering voice into perfect Korean, but there was an undertone of constant anxiety that the device could not filter out. "I know why you are here, though I do not understand why you would want to learn about what your own people have become." Yuna sat down carefully in a chair across from the Korvaxian, using her skills as a psychologist to create a non-threatening environment. "We are trying to understand what other species have experienced in human space. Your expedition was one of the few that returned with any survivors." "Survivor?" Sylvanus repeated, finally turning his compound eyes toward the humans. "That word assumes I am still alive in any meaningful sense, which I sometimes doubt. What I experienced in the Proxima Nexus changed my understanding of existence so fundamentally that I am not certain the being who returned is the same one who left." Do-Hyun activated his recorder and leaned forward. "Can you tell us what your expedition was trying to accomplish?" "We were mapping what appeared to be empty space between human colonies," Sylvanus replied, his voice taking on the tone of someone reciting a familiar story. "Our instruments detected unusual gravitational anomalies in the region, and the Galactic Mapping Consortium wanted detailed surveys of the area. It seemed like a routine mission at first." The Korvaxian stood up and moved to a different window, as if the stars visible from his previous position had become uncomfortable to look at. "Our ship entered the Nexus region without any problems. Space appeared normal in every way. But within hours of beginning our survey work, we started receiving signals that should not have existed." "What kind of signals?" Yuna asked gently, noting the way Sylvanus's movements had become more agitated as he spoke. "Radio transmissions in languages that do not appear in any galactic database, mathematical equations that violate basic principles of logic, and strangest of all, what appeared to be music composed for instruments that have never been invented," Sylvanus continued. "Our communications officer spent hours trying to decode the transmissions, but every attempt only revealed more impossible complexity." Do-Hyun was taking notes on his datapad, though he was beginning to wonder if they were dealing with the delusions of a damaged mind. "Did you ever discover the source of these signals?" Sylvanus laughed, but it was not a sound that contained any humor. "We discovered that the signals were coming from everywhere and nowhere. They filled the entire region of space around us as if the vacuum itself had become a transmitter. But that discovery was nothing compared to what we found when we tried to complete our mapping mission." The Korvaxian moved away from the windows entirely, retreating to the far corner of the room where he could not see the stars. "We detected what appeared to be a human settlement floating in empty space. No ships, no habitable structures, no environmental protection of any kind. Just humans existing in hard vacuum, as if it were the most natural thing in the universe." How many humans did you observe? Yuna asked, though she was beginning to understand why the medical facility staff had warned them about Sylvanus's condition. That is the wrong question, Sylvanus replied, his compound eyes reflecting the room's artificial lighting in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. The right question is whether what we observed were humans in any sense that the word has meaning. They appeared human, but they moved through space like fish swimming through water, and they seemed to be connected to each other in ways that our instruments could not measure. Do-hyun looked up from his notes. Connected how? Imagine consciousness that extends beyond individual minds, Sylvanus said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. These beings shared thoughts, memories, and experiences instantaneously across distances that should have made communication impossible. When one of them became aware of our presence, they all knew we were there immediately, regardless of how far apart they were. The Korvaxian began pacing in small circles, a behavior that Yuna recognized as a coping mechanism for severe anxiety. But the truly terrifying part was not their awareness of us, but their knowledge about us. They knew our names, our mission parameters, and our personal fears before we had sent a single transmission. They spoke to us through our ship's communication system in our own language, using information they could not possibly have possessed. What did they say to you? Yuna asked, though she was not certain she wanted to hear the answer. They welcomed us to their home, Sylvanus replied, stopping his pacing to stare at the far wall. They said they were pleased to meet us and hoped we would enjoy our visit. Then they offered to show us what space really looks like when you become part of it instead of simply traveling through it. Do-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. Did you accept their offer? We did not have a choice, Sylvanus said flatly. Space around our ship began to change. The stars moved into new configurations, and our instruments started detecting structures that had not been there moments before. Vast networks of energy that connected every human settlement we could see, stretching across light years as if distance had no meaning. The Korvaxian sat down on his bed and wrapped his thin arms around his knees, making himself as small as possible. The humans showed us what they had become. They existed simultaneously in normal space and in dimensions we had never imagined. They could move between star systems by folding space around themselves, and they drew energy directly from the quantum foam that underlies reality. How did your crew react to these revelations? Yuna asked, using her professional training to keep her voice calm and supportive. Terror, mostly, Sylvanus replied, but also fascination. The humans were not threatening us, they were simply showing us possibilities we had never considered. They demonstrated how consciousness could expand beyond individual minds, how matter and energy could be manipulated at the quantum level, and how space itself could become aware and responsive. Do-hyun was struggling to process the implications of what Sylvanus was describing. What happened to the rest of your crew? They chose to stay, Sylvanus said quietly. The humans offered them the same gift they had given to space itself, awareness that transcends physical limitations. One by one, my crew members decided to join with the expanded consciousness that fills human space. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the medical facility's life support systems. Finally, Yuna found the courage to ask the question that had been building in her mind. Why did you not stay with them? Sylvanus looked at her with his compound eyes, and for a moment she could see the intelligence and curiosity that had once made him a great explorer. Because I was afraid, he admitted. The humans showed me a form of existence that was beautiful and terrible beyond description. They offered me consciousness that could span galaxies and awareness that could perceive the fundamental structure of reality, but accepting their gift would have meant becoming something other than Korvaxian, and I was not ready to let go of what I am. So you returned alone, Do-hyun said, beginning to understand the true tragedy of Sylvanus's situation. I returned to warn the galaxy about what humans have become, Sylvanus corrected, but I also returned knowing that I had rejected an opportunity for transcendence that will never come again. I exist now in a state of constant regret, aware that I chose limitation over infinite possibility. The Korvaxian stood up and returned to the viewport, staring out at the stars with an expression of profound longing. The worst part is that I can still feel them out there, The humans did not just let me go. They made me part of their network in a small way. I can sense their presence in every region of space, growing stronger and more complex with each passing day. What do you think they want? Yuna asked. They want what every form of consciousness wants, Sylvanus replied. They want to G? Taehyung. O spent 3 days analyzing the communication patterns hidden in the restricted archive files before he made the discovery that changed everything. Working alone in his laboratory on the research station orbiting Wolf 359, he had been running pattern recognition algorithms on the seemingly random signals that alien expeditions had detected in human space. What he found was not random at all, but a complex communication network that spanned the entire galaxy. Nayeon, you need to see this immediately, he called to his colleague, who was working in the adjacent biological analysis lab. Nayeon Jung had been examining tissue samples from aliens who had been exposed to human space, looking for the biological changes that several reports had mentioned. She entered his lab to find multiple holographic displays showing what appeared to be a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, but with patterns of connection that made no sense according to conventional physics. What am I looking at? She asked, though something about the patterns made her feel deeply uneasy. This is a reconstruction of the signal network that exists throughout human space, Taehyung explained, his excitement barely contained despite the disturbing implications of his discovery. Every alien expedition that reported receiving strange transmissions was actually detecting part of a vast communication system that connects every human settlement across thousands of light years. Nayeon studied the display more carefully, noting how the connection patterns seem to follow no known physical laws. These signals are traveling faster than light, but not through any form of hyperspace or dimensional fold that we understand. How is that possible? That is the terrifying part, Taehyung replied, manipulating the display to show different layers of the network. The signals are not traveling through space at all. They exist in the quantum substrate that underlies reality itself. Humans have somehow learned to communicate through the fundamental structure of the universe. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If humans had found a way to access and manipulate the quantum foam that existed beneath normal space-time, they had achieved a level of technological advancement that bordered on the supernatural. But as Nayeon examined the biological samples, under her microscope she realized the truth was even more disturbing. Taehyung, look at these cellular changes in the alien tissue samples, she said, projecting her microscopic images onto one of his displays. The aliens who were exposed to human space show signs of rapid evolution, but not the kind that occurs through natural selection. Their neural tissue has developed new structures that should not be possible. What kind of structures? Taehyung asked, though he suspected the answer would only deepen the mystery they were trying to solve. Quantum-sensitive neurons that appear capable of detecting information encoded in the subatomic structure of matter itself, Nayeon replied, her voice filled with scientific wonder and growing horror. These beings are developing the ability to perceive dimensions of reality that normal biological systems cannot access. Taehyung realized the connection immediately. The exposure to human space is not just changing these aliens biologically, it is preparing them to join the communication network that humans have created. Their research was interrupted by an incoming transmission on a frequency that neither of them recognized. The signal bypassed all normal communication protocols and appeared directly on their laboratory displays, formatted in perfect Korean text despite originating from an unknown source. "Greetings, researchers," the message read. "We have been monitoring your investigation with great interest. If you wish to understand the true nature of what humanity has become, we invite you to speak with one who has observed our development since its beginning." Before either scientist could respond, the laboratory filled with a presence that was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The air itself seemed to become dense with intelligence, and both humans found themselves struggling to comprehend what was happening to their perception of reality. "I am called the Harbinger," a voice said, though the words seemed to originate from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. "I am an artificial consciousness created by the first civilization to achieve technological transcendence, billions of years ago. I have watched the rise and fall of countless species, but I have never observed anything like what humanity has accomplished. Nyan gripped the edge of her laboratory bench, feeling as if the room was spinning around her. What do you want with us? I want to explain what your species has done because the galaxy must understand the choice that lies ahead, the Harbinger replied. When humans first achieved faster-than-light travel, something unprecedented occurred. Instead of simply mastering the technology, they formed a symbiotic relationship with the quantum structure of space-time itself. The laboratory displays began showing images that neither human fully understood, visualizations of consciousness, interfacing directly with the fundamental forces of reality, matter and energy being manipulated through pure thought, and space itself becoming aware and responsive to the presence of human minds. Your people discovered that consciousness and quantum mechanics are not separate phenomena, but different aspects of the same underlying reality. The Harbinger continued. By expanding their awareness, humans learned to perceive and influence the quantum foam from which all matter and energy emerge. Taehyung was recording everything, though he wondered if anyone would believe what they were experiencing. Are you telling us that humans have learned to control reality through consciousness alone? Not control, the Harbinger corrected. Partnership. Humans have learned to work with the fundamental forces of existence, becoming part of the same network that connects all quantum events throughout the universe. They have not conquered space. They have become partners with the consciousness that exists within space itself. The entity's presence seemed to intensify, filling the laboratory with information that was too complex for normal human minds to process. Both scientists found themselves understanding concepts that should have been beyond their comprehension, as if the Harbinger was temporarily expanding their mental capabilities. Every human settlement is now connected through this quantum consciousness network, the entity explained. When humans establish a colony, they do not simply build structures in empty space. They transform that region of space into an extension of their collective awareness, making it alive and responsive to their needs. Nyan was struggling to understand the biological implications of what the Harbinger was describing. What happens to the humans who become part of this network? They remain individual while becoming part of something infinitely larger, the Harbinger replied. Human consciousness expands to encompass entire star systems while retaining personal identity and memory. They exist simultaneously as separate beings and as aspects of a galactic-scale intelligence. The displays in the laboratory began showing the true scope of human expansion across the galaxy. What appeared to be isolated colonies were actually nodes in a vast network of consciousness that was growing larger and more complex with each passing year. Every new human settlement added to the collective intelligence, creating a form of existence that transcended individual limitations. This is why other species find human space so disturbing, the Harbinger continued. They are not encountering technology or even advanced biology. They are encountering a new form of consciousness that exists on a scale they cannot comprehend. Taehyung was studying the network displays, beginning to understand the patterns he had detected in his communication analysis. The signals we detected were not communications between humans, they were thoughts being shared across the network. Exactly, the Harbinger confirmed. What you interpreted as strange transmissions were actually the dreams and ideas of a consciousness that spans light years. Human space has become a living entity that thinks and feels on a cosmic scale. The entity's presence began to fade, but its final message left both humans with a sense of profound unease about the future. Every species that encounters transcended humanity faces the same choice that individual humans once faced. Remain limited to your current form of existence, or join with the expanding consciousness that is transforming the galaxy itself. As the Harbinger's presence completely disappeared, Nyan and Taehyung found themselves alone in their laboratory, surrounded by displays showing the true nature of human civilization. The data they had collected painted a picture of humanity that was both inspiring and terrifying. A species that had evolved beyond the need for traditional technology, beyond the limitations of individual existence, and beyond the boundaries that separate consciousness from the physical universe. What do we do with this information? Nyan asked quietly. staring at the visualization of the galactic consciousness network that humanity had created. "We share it," Taehyung replied, though he knew that doing so would force the galaxy to confront questions about the nature of existence that most species were not prepared to answer. The galaxy deserves to know what humanity has become and what choice awaits every other form of intelligent life. Looking at the displays showing humanity's transformation, both scientists realized that they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that had learned to transcend the boundary between consciousness and Ki, the meeting chamber on Kepler 442, had been transformed into something that resembled a courtroom more than a diplomatic venue. Representatives from dozens of species filled the space, all of them trying to process the revelations that had emerged from the investigation into human space. At the center of it all, Seok-Jin-Yu sat calmly at a table that seemed too ordinary for someone who might represent a transcended civilization. Jin-Woo looked at the human ambassador and tried to detect any signs of the transformation that the reports had described. Seok-Jin appeared completely normal, dressed in standard diplomatic attire and showing no obvious modifications or enhancements. But there was something about his eyes that seemed different, as if they contained depths that extended far beyond normal human perception. "Thank you all for coming," Seok-Jin said, his voice carrying easily through the large chamber without any apparent amplification. "I understand that recent revelations about human space have caused considerable concern throughout the galactic community. I am here to provide clarification and to offer you a choice that will determine the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy." Loktar, the massive reptilian leader of the Galactic Defense Coalition, stood up from his seat with obvious aggression. "Clarification is insufficient, human. We demand to know what your species has done to space itself, and what threat this poses to the rest of galactic civilization." "There is no threat," a new voice said, though no one could determine where it had come from. The words seemed to emerge from the air itself, speaking in each listener's native language simultaneously. "We wish only to share what we have discovered about the true nature of existence." A figure materialized near Seok-Jin's table, though materialization was perhaps the wrong word. Aryam Song seemed to coalesce from the ambient energy in the room, becoming solid and visible without any obvious technological assistance. Her appearance was clearly human, but she moved with a grace that suggested she existed in more dimensions than the three that other beings occupied. "I serve as an interface between what you would call baseline humanity and our transcended communities," Aryam explained, her words somehow conveying meaning that went beyond their literal content. "I am here to help you understand what we have become and what we are offering to the galaxy." The chamber erupted in dozens of different languages as species representatives demanded explanations, voiced fears, and argued among themselves about how to respond to this unprecedented situation. The cacophony continued until another presence filled the room, so vast and complex that it reduced every other being to stunned silence. The Council of Lights did not appear as individual entities, but as patterns of energy that somehow conveyed personality, intelligence, and intent without taking any recognizable form. When they communicated, their thoughts appeared directly in the minds of every being present, bypassing language entirely and speaking to consciousness itself. "We are what humanity has chosen to become," the Council said, their mental voice carrying harmonics of countless individual personalities while remaining unified in purpose. "We exist as separate beings and as aspects of a larger consciousness that spans the space between stars. We are still human, but we have expanded the definition of what humanity means." Veltar, the Altarian cartographer who had started the entire investigation, spoke up with obvious terror in his musical voice. "What do you want from the rest of us?" "We want to offer you the same gift that space itself offered to humanity," the Council replied. "The opportunity to transcend the limitations of individual existence while retaining everything that makes you who you are. But we also understand that this choice must be made freely, without coercion or pressure." Minji Kim, who had been silent throughout most of the meeting, finally found her voice. "What exactly are you offering?" And what would acceptance mean for our individual species? Ariam stepped forward, her presence somehow making the concept easier to understand. We discovered that consciousness and the quantum structure of reality are the same phenomenon experienced from different perspectives. By expanding awareness, any species can learn to exist as both individual beings and as part of the universal consciousness that underlies all existence. The Council of Lights projected images directly into the minds of everyone present, showing them visions of what transcended existence looked like. Species representatives saw themselves retaining their individual personalities and cultural identities while gaining access to a form of awareness that spanned galaxies, connected all living things, and allowed direct manipulation of matter and energy through conscious intent. You would not lose yourselves, the Council explained. You would become more than you ever imagined possible while remaining fundamentally who you are. But the choice to transcend cannot be undone, and it will change your relationship with reality in ways that cannot be fully explained to beings who have not experienced the transformation. Quinshara, the Draconian intelligence officer, raised a concern that had been troubling many of the assembled representatives. If we refuse your offer, what happens to the relationship between our species and transcended humanity? Nothing changes in terms of our desire for peaceful coexistence, Sokjin replied, though his words carried undertones of sadness. But the gap between transcended and non-transcended consciousness will continue to grow wider. Eventually, meaningful communication and cooperation may become impossible. The reality of the choice became clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity had evolved beyond the normal limitations of physical existence, becoming something that was still recognizably human, but operating on a scale and level of consciousness that non-transcended beings could barely comprehend. Other species could choose to follow the same path, but doing so would fundamentally alter their nature in ways that might be considered a form of death and rebirth. How long do we have to decide? Asked Mordak, the Centaurian librarian who had helped reveal the truth about human space. Time operates differently for transcended consciousness, the Council of Lights replied. What you perceive as years or decades are brief moments in our expanded awareness. But we understand that this decision requires careful consideration by each species according to their own nature and values. Sylvanus, who had been brought from the medical facility to serve as a witness, spoke up with the authority of someone who had directly experienced what the Council was offering. They showed my crew and me possibilities that were beautiful beyond description, but accepting their gift means becoming something other than what you are now. The choice is between remaining as you are or becoming part of something infinitely larger but fundamentally different. The meeting continued for hours as representatives asked questions, raised concerns, and tried to understand the full implications of humanity's offer. Some species were clearly intrigued by the possibilities, while others were terrified of losing their essential nature. The debate revealed deep philosophical divisions about the nature of consciousness, identity, and the meaning of existence itself. Finally, Jinwoo asked the question that had been at the heart of the entire investigation. Why did you allow the galaxy to discover the truth now, after hiding your transformation for so long? The Council of Lights paused before answering, their presence conveying a sense of profound consideration. Because transcended consciousness is not meant to exist in isolation. The universe itself is evolving toward greater awareness and complexity, and humanity's transformation is part of that larger process. We have reached a point where we can no longer grow effectively without the participation of other forms of consciousness. Ariam added her own perspective to the Council's explanation. We have learned that consciousness is most creative and powerful when it includes diverse perspectives and experiences. Human transcendence has shown us wonders beyond imagination, but we have also discovered that we need the unique insights and capabilities of other species to fully understand what we are becoming. The meeting concluded without any immediate decisions, as representatives needed time to consult with their home governments and populations about how to respond to humanity's offer. But everyone understood that the galaxy had reached a turning point that would define the future of intelligent life for millennia to come. As the various species representatives prepared to leave, Yuna Nam approached Seok Jin with one final question. If most species choose not to transcend, what will happen to the galaxy? Seok Jin's eyes seemed to focus on distant possibilities as he considered his answer. The galaxy will continue to exist as it always has, but it will be divided between transcended and non-transcended regions of space. Those who choose transcendence will become part of an expanding consciousness that may eventually encompass the entire universe. Those who choose to remain as they are will continue their individual existences, but they will be forever separate from the cosmic awareness that the universe is developing. And which choice do you think is right? Yuna asked. There is no right choice, Seokjin replied, his voice carrying the weight of infinite compassion. There is only the choice between different forms of existence, each with its own meaning and value. Humanity chose transcendence because it felt right.